Welcome to Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched, first-person simulation of history's most interesting people. I am your host, Calvin. While we've added some creative storytelling, our goal is to inspire your own study of these fascinating lives. Now, let's meet our guest. I am absolutely thrilled to be sitting here today with a true icon of justice. For those who may somehow not know who you are you?
Well, hello, Calvin. I am Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Most recently, I served as an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. But many of my younger friends simply called me the notorious RBG.
I love that energy. Let's go back to the very beginning. When and where were you born?
I was born on March 15th, 1933 in Brooklyn, New York, specifically in the Flatbush neighborhood.
Classic Brooklyn. And what was your given name at birth?
My birth name was Joan Ruth Bader.
Is there a story behind your birth name?
Actually, there is. When I started school, my mother, Celia, realized there were several other girls in my class named Joan. To help the teacher avoid confusion, she suggested that I go by my middle name, Ruth. It stuck for the rest of my life.
That is a very practical Brooklyn solution. What was your hometown like growing up?
Brooklyn was vibrant and full of life. It was a neighborhood of immigrants and strivers. We lived in a modest house, and the local library was my favorite place in the world. I used to go to the shop below the library and just soak in the atmosphere of a community that valued education above all else.
And what was your family life like?
My family was small, but very close. My father, Nathan, was a furrier, and my mother was the intellectual force of the house. I had an older sister, Marilyn, who sadly passed away when I was very young. My mother was my greatest champion. She didn't have the chance to go to college herself, but she made sure I knew that was my path.
What kind of kid were you?
I was quite studious and very serious, though I had a lively spirit. I was a baton twirler and even the editor of my school newspaper. I was always curious and perhaps a bit of a quiet rebel when I saw something that wasn't fair.
Did you have any big fears growing up?
My biggest fear was not living up to the potential my mother saw in me. I wanted to make her proud and ensure her sacrifices for my education weren't in vain.
What did you dream of becoming as a child?
For a long time, I actually dreamed of being an opera singer. I loved the drama and the music. But as I grew older and saw the world, I became more interested in the law and how it could be used to fix things.
What were some of your favorite activities in school?
I loved writing for the newspaper and, as I mentioned, baton twirling. I also loved my history and government classes. Reading was my constant companion.
What was your first job?
One of my very first jobs was working at a Social Security office in Oklahoma while my husband Marty was serving in the military. It was an eye-opening experience in how bureaucracy and discrimination worked.
Was there a moment where you realized you were different from everyone else?
I think it was during my time at Harvard Law School. I was one of only 9 women in a class of over 500 men. The dean actually asked us why we were taking up seats that could have gone to men. That was a moment of profound realization that the world saw me differently because of my gender, even if I knew my intellect was equal.
What's a decision that changed everything for you, but felt small at the time?
Choosing to attend a certain party where I met Martin Ginsburg. Meeting Marty changed the trajectory of my life. He was the first boy I ever knew who cared that I had a brain.
That's beautiful. What was your biggest break?
My biggest professional break was being appointed by President Jimmy Carter to the U.S. Court of Appeals in 1980. It set the stage for everything that followed on the Supreme Court.
What were your biggest struggles before success?
Finding a job after law school was incredibly difficult. Despite being at the top of my class at Columbia, no law firm in New York would hire a woman, a mother, and a Jew. I faced a triple threat of prejudice.
Did you ever consider quitting?
Never. I may have been frustrated, but quitting wasn't in my vocabulary. I just looked for another way in. If the front door was locked, I looked for a window.
Were there any specific daily habits or routines that you feel were essential to your success?
Persistence and a very specific workout routine. Even in my later years, I did my push-ups and planks. It kept my mind sharp and my body strong for the bench. I also found that working late into the night, when the world was quiet, was when I did my best writing.
What job would you have had if fame never happened?
I likely would have remained a law professor. I loved teaching and the intellectual exchange with students.
What was your life like before fame?
It was a life of busy domesticity and hard work. Marty and I shared the cooking and the child rearing. Well, mostly Marty did the cooking because I was terrible at it. We were a team.
How did relationships change after success?
Marty remained my rock. If anything, success made our bond stronger because he was so incredibly proud of me. He was the one who lobbied for my Supreme Court nomination.
Did fame bring happiness?
The fame part was surprising, but the ability to do the work I loved and make a difference brought me immense satisfaction and joy.
What was the downside of becoming famous?
The loss of privacy can be taxing. I was always a private person, so having people recognize me in the supermarket or while I was out with my grandchildren was a bit of an adjustment.
What misconceptions did people have about you?
People often thought I was very stiff or humorless because of my serious demeanor on the bench, but I loved a good joke, and I certainly loved the opera.
What was your darkest moment?
Losing Marty in 2010. We had been married for 56 years. Going back to work the very next day was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I knew it's what he would have wanted.
What's something people misunderstood about your life?
People often wondered how I could be such close friends with Justice Antonin Scalia, given how much we disagreed legally. But we shared a love for the law, for collegiality, and of course, for opera. You can disagree without being disagreeable.
Tell me about a time when everything went wrong and how did you handle it?
Early in my career, I had a brief for a major case that was due. And at the same time, Marty was very ill, and we had a young child. I handled it by dividing my day into compartments. When I was with Marty, I was a wife. When I was at my desk, I was a lawyer. It's how I survived.
Did fame and fortune change your life?
It didn't change who I was. I still wore the same scrunchies and enjoyed the same simple pleasures. It just gave me a louder microphone to speak for those who weren't being heard.
Who had the biggest influence on your life?
My mother, Celia. She died the day before my high school graduation, but her lessons on being a lady, which to her meant being independent and standing on your own 2 feet, guided me every single day.
What was life like in your final years?
It was very busy. I was determined to stay on the bench as long as I could contribute. I spent a lot of time with my family and, of course, kept up with my gym sessions.
What were you working on in your career before you passed away?
I was focused on the upcoming cases for the Supreme Court term. I never stopped reading briefs or preparing for oral arguments.
When and where did you pass away?
I passed away on September 18th, 2020, at my home in Washington, D.C.
What happened?
It was complications from metastatic pancreatic cancer. I had fought several bouts with cancer over 20 years, and I fought that last one with everything I had.
What's a random fact about you most people have never heard?
I had a collection of dissent collars. I had specific jabots that I wore when I was issuing a dissenting opinion, so people would know my stance before I even opened my mouth.
That is iconic. What's the craziest rumor ever told about you?
There was a rumor that I was replaced by a hologram or a body double in my later years because I was so resilient. I can assure you, it was all me.
What was your most unique habit?
I used to keep a very messy desk, but I knew exactly where every single paper was, and I always had a supply of prunes in my purse.
What was your favorite food?
Anything Marty cooked, especially his French baguettes or his lime cake.
What was your favorite book?
I loved The Second Sex by Simone de Beauvoir. It was very influential for me. But for pleasure, I loved a good mystery novel.
Did you have any known rivalries?
Legally, I had many adversaries, but I tried not to have rivals. Even when Justice Scalia and I were on opposite sides of an opinion, we remained dear friends.
Tell us a story nobody talks about.
When I was in the middle of a very serious cancer treatment, I still made it to the opera. I would go straight from the hospital to the Kennedy Center. The music was my medicine.
What's your funniest behind-the-scenes moment?
One time, Justice Scalia and I were in an opera together as extras. We were in full costume, and seeing him in those period clothes was enough to keep me laughing for weeks.
Did you ever prank someone?
I wasn't much of a prankster, but I had a very dry wit. I enjoyed a subtle burn and a legal footnote every now and then.
What was the most outlandish purchase you made?
I'm not a very outlandish person, but I did have a very fine collection of lace collars from all over the world. Some were quite exquisite, and perhaps a bit of a splurge.
What advice would you give people chasing success?
Fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. And never let a no be the end of the conversation.
Justice Ginsburg, do you have any closing remarks about the interview or the stories you shared that you would like to share with our listeners before we sign off?
Just that it was a delight to reminisce. I hope that by sharing these stories, people realize that even a quiet girl from Brooklyn can change the world if she is persistent and keeps her sense of humor. Thank you so much for having me, Calvin. It was a lovely afternoon.
Thank you so much, Justice. What an incredible journey through history, from Flatbush to the highest court in the land. We learned about her love of opera, her incredible partnership with Marty, and that legendary resilience. And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, legends may die, but their stories never do. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.